Hi, everyone. We have Patricia with us today and Anita, my woman squad in the construction sector. And today I have two questions for them. In light with Women's Day yesterday, I'd like to provide more a voice to empower women, but also empower men to be allies and support women entering construction. So, Patricia, hi. Do you want to just tell us what do you do at the moment, and then I can ask you the question?
So I run Master Build Hers, which is a company where we empower women and we help women to grow their businesses and to scale them to at least seven figures in annual revenue because we believe that more women need to earn lots of money because with money comes power and with power comes the opportunity for us to influence policies, status quo, and working cultures.
Thank you. Sounds exciting.
Oh, thank you.
And it's, but it's really important because when you empower women, you empower the full community, and this is crucial. So what do you think are the main challenge faced by women in construction? And maybe you could give some really practical example of some issue you probably faced as a woman working in this quite male-centric environment.
Well, one of the problems is the narrative. So when you hear women in construction, what comes to mind? It's women working, women employees in the industry. That's generally what you think when you hear women. When you hear women in construction, your mind doesn't go to, okay, women entrepreneurs also in the space. It doesn't go there. So the first challenge I see is changing the narrative or enlarging the narrative to include women who are also business owners in the space. And it's all empowering women to know that you don't only have to be an employee, you can also start up, run, and scale a successful business. So that's one of the challenges that I see in the industry um, currently. And what does that do is that it slows our progress. So research has shown that it's going to take, at this current rate, it's going to take about 200 years in construction before we see any form of equality to the extent that we want it to change. And this narrative helps to feed that, in my view. Now, if we have more business owners within the space, it's going to accelerate the change. It's going to bring around the change quicker for us because more women will be business owners, more women will be in the chambers of commerce, they'll be on the boards, the decision making, they'll be helping with policy making, they will be influencing working cultures, they'll be changing the status quo, and that's how we're going to accelerate change. So the narrative needs to be enlarged. So when you hear women in construction, the mind doesn't automatically go to women employees, but also women business owners. And so we need to start
Yes.
changing that. But my experience, it's in construction is that, well, first of all, I didn't go straight from university into construction. And research shows that most women don't. A lot of women come into construction later in life. But what happens in the industry is that a lot of the opportunities are given to younger people, like the apprenticeship programs and so forth. Meanwhile, the data shows us that women tend to come in later. So what you find is that older women can't get apprenticeships. They can't really get like internship trainings and that type of thing. They don't get the the mentorship that they need or the sponsorship that they need. The
Yes.
programs just aren't geared towards a more mature woman. And so in the space coming from a different sector into construction, for example, I faced that where you feel like you are an outsider and the industry has
Yes.
a way to make you feel like you're an outsider despite the fact that you're bringing so much experience and transferable skills. It is not rewarded and it is not really appreciated in the space. And so what you find is that you have a lot of women with a lot of experience, skills, certification, expertise, you name it, competencies, and they're stuck. because
Yeah.
there's nothing there to help them to move up. So that has been my experience in the industry, and that's how I think we can go about bringing about some of the changes that we need.
Yes, indeed. And sometimes it's to by this woman to take ownership of their career as well. And sometimes it's to step out of the current environment that you are, and trying to live your truth, and using your skills that you have. Yeah.
That's true, but you know what? I've never met a woman in the industry who wasn't taking ownership of her career. Never. All the women I've met, and even in the research that has been done, women want to go further. They want to do more. They want to be more. The problem is that our construction is a very gendered industry, and our working culture is very gender bias, and so the even this idea that the woman must come in and fix herself to fit the environment, that does not promote diversity or enable women to come into the space and flourish. And so we have these programs that do not work, where they
Mhm.
cherry pick certain women and they're going to mentor them or sponsor them to move up the chain. And it we still don't see the benefits of that because the bulk of the women are still at the bottom of the pyramid. So it's taking a few. What this also creates is just this idea that some women are better than others, and also it creates a divide between a woman who's at the top, and then it creates, for lack of a better term, this crab in the barrel situation where everybody, like, you find this on sites oftentimes where the women don't necessarily support each other. That's because of this
Type of
concept
environment.
of cherry picking, like this one woman in order to mentor her to push her up so that you can take the diversity box. So it creates a whole situation within the industry that is just most unfortunate. But my view in terms of one of the alternative solutions that we can have to that is having more women start up and empowering them and providing the means and the opportunity for them to be fostered and to get the support that they need to grow their businesses.
Mm. Taking action, and being empowered to do that. It comes also to one issue that I've seen. We know that probably women go less for funding as well. I think I've been reading about the funding situation as well into the startup world. We could be something that, as a woman, you think that it's going to be more difficult to break through, or probably the network as well, because construction could be quite really uh, really male centric, and not
Yes, well,
women at the top.
the funding, women do find it harder to get funding, but it's because of the culture. So you go, and there are articles written about this where women, they go to the banks and they don't get the same level of respect, and oftentimes you'll find that women businesses are seen as hobbies, like
Yeah.
yeah, so you don't get that level of respect when you walk through the door, like, okay, her business is a serious one, and we can invest in it because there's going to be a return on this investment. It's just like, okay, here is she off doing another hobby, she's going to leave soon. And because our burn rate, like, we enter and exit entrepreneurship in such large numbers at such large percentages because of these issues, but nobody really goes to the root cause of anything anymore. People just look at it and say, oh, she's going to exit soon because that's what happened to women, so why bother to invest? But what we need is also for policies, to help women. So for example, in Bristol, you have the women's charter. Like, other cities could adopt something similar. We can have more funding. So we have hubs, entrepreneurial hubs, even government funded ones, and we can have ones that target women. You have certain criteria targets women, or where in construction you have projects and publicly procured projects. Like in some countries, like in the US, you can register as a minority owned construction business, for example, like a woman minority, this woman is a minority, it's a minority woman-led business, and therefore, you know, certain amount of contracts are held in a space for these businesses to access, because the fact of the matter is that if it's just not a level playing field, you know, so we can't all be playing ball on the same field. So there are things that we can do in order to foster and create this culture for women and as entrepreneurs. But that's why I believe that if more of us start up, the voices get louder, we become a chorus, and then they see that, you know, not only are we able to, not that we have to prove, we shouldn't have to prove anything, but this is just a society in which we live. When they see more women running successful businesses within the space, they will have to take a look and listen to what we have to say.
Thank you for sharing. And I think you're right. We don't have enough of this startup model, and the construction business model have been quite the same for a long time. And the innovation, a lot of resistance to innovation is happening, but still really slow rates.
Yes.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to ask to Anita, what are, in a nutshell, what are the main challenges you faced or you think women face in the construction industry? And at the same time, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self to facing this fear to be sometimes the only woman in a room? So,
yeah. God, a great question. So, so I'll introduce myself. So I'm Anita.
Yes, of course.
And I've been in construction for over 10 years, and I've not quite left because I still dip my foot back in sometimes. But I came at a crossroads in my career that made me predominantly decide to leave, because I couldn't see a space for me anymore on the terms that I wanted. So I'd still dip my foot back in, but that's not where I see my career going. Although now, so from the inside, so like Patricia, I influence it from the outside, and that's through my business, PS Project Management. So I work with predominantly women who are in those spaces to level up their leadership, to be able to lead in those spaces where they might feel like the imposter because they're different, because they misfit, where they hear messages about how they should be and who they need to be as a leader. And I instill in them that confidence and that self-belief that it's not them, it's the system. And they can find ways to navigate themselves around that system without it crippling them and without it destroying them. So that's what led me onto this road, and it's very much led by my own challenges in that space. And it's such a shame, because then we lose such good talent because people leave, or they stay working below their potential because they're not given the opportunity to progress. And it's just such a shame. And it absolutely is the structure and the system that's the challenges. But of course, as people, we're in those structures and systems, so we perpetuate them. So this is not about men versus women, but this is about all of us being in this construction space that then perpetuate those stories. So I've been in my worst case of discrimination for being a woman, and possibly being an Indian woman, although that wasn't said explicitly, came from another woman. But again, it was part of the structure and the system of who she felt should be a leader, and how that was rewarded and how her behaviour was accepted. So, and I've had some of those experiences with men, but mainly in that case, it was a particular woman who I felt was the reason for me feeling that discrimination. But it was also supported by the structure. So I think the challenge is always the structure and the system, but we are people in that, and we have a responsibility to change that. I haven't got the energy or the time to wait 200 years. So we've got to start changing that now, and we've got to start changing those narratives. And I think that comes through more women in those leadership roles. 1 is not enough, 2 is not enough. We need a mass of women in these roles who don't have to fit the stereotype of what a leader should be, We need men who also don't fit the stereotype of what a leader should be, that embrace that, and allow all genders for it not to be a barrier, but actually it could be part of what makes us different. It's part of our superpowers. We need genuine diversity, we need inclusivity, and we need cultures where we embrace the misfit and where we all belong.
Thank you very much, and I definitely agree with you. And this is coming back to what Patricia was saying. We need more women owners, but women into this leadership role, to be able to bring more women, but also women who empower women. This is one of the issues. It's not making it to the top and keeping it for yourself. It's about mentoring and coaching other women into coming up as well. So I think it's really crucial. I also left the construction industry. I think three of us are kind of left and drifting and do para-construction activity, I will say. And this is what is keeping us sane. It's being able to make an impact, but not from being an insider as well, and having this opportunity to think back and observe what we've been making assumption about as something else can be true, or even thinking about, okay, what are the marginal gains we can do? And you know that I'm all about making a jolt to the construction industry. So I feel a bit sorry for whoever is not ready for the explosion. So thank you very much for your time. And I think if you could just give me a piece of advice, like in one phrase or two, about what would you say to the younger self if you have to come into construction to equip yourself to be able to walk with your shoulder up, your shoulder really straight and your heads up around the construction site, and said, I own it, I deserve to be here, and I won't let anyone to make me feel lower of what I'm not, for example. And I think that women sometimes we do suffer of this lack of beliefs that we deserve to be where we are. So Anita, do you want to say?
Yeah.
Patricia?
Yeah, so advice to my younger self. So I think I take things personally too. So when I'd hear comments made to me, I would go away and think about it and be like, oh, what could I do differently? What could I do better? And of course, there is a place for that. But it took me time to realize that actually what I brought to the space, that was enough in itself, that was valuable in itself. And these comments that were coming to me that made me question myself, and made me feel like it was me that had to change, diminished me. So although I don't think this is about resilience, because I think that's a bit of a term we use for allowing women and other people that are different to have to fit in around here. You need to be more resilient. I don't think it's about resilience, but I think it's about this self-belief, that knowing it's not me. And yes, there is a place where I can develop and be better, but that comes from internal and from doing the job better. It's not about other people's opinions, although that's hard because that can of course affect your career and your leadership. But it's that self-belief and that inner determination, and just knowing those differences you bring are your strengths.
Thank you, Anita. Really a valid point. Patricia, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self, or to a young woman who today, because let's face it, women, we have a certain age and it's time to embrace new generation coming. I must say, I can't wait for new women to be as bold as we are at the moment. So what would you say, Patricia, to this woman entering construction today?
I would say own who you are. Because for a long time, as you know, I was considered too much girl. And it wasn't until I decided I was going to own who I am that things started shifting for me. And so I would say to her, own who you are and understand that they need you as much as you think you need them. They need you, and that's something that I didn't understand initially, from everything, even as a minority woman. I mean, it's their companies say when they have more women, they because they're able to put that they're diverse, they win more projects, especially government projects. Come on, like this is bottom line, these are numbers, and so they need, as much as you think you need them, I know I'm gonna, try and hunker down and disappear because they need you as much. So don't be afraid to own who you are and create a little ripple. Um, just don't lay down and let everybody walk over you.
Wow, thank you. Really empowering, and I hope that somewhere out there, a young woman that will be encouraged by our words and will be keeping her shoulder up, heads up, and walk with proud around the construction sites. And I think for me, it's really what I retain is like self-belief and know who you are. Self-belief from Anita and know how you are from Patricia. And with this, you equipped to walk through a construction site. And don't forget that the skills are crucial as well. Don't forget that the construction industry needs you as much as you think that you probably not needed. You are needed. So thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Anita. So this was the pre-academic moments where we're making knowledge shareable. So thank you for listening, and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.